Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest on items on the agenda, please? No, thank you. Apologies for absence, Claire.
Thank you, Chairman. I've received apologies from Councillors Hempsall and Tipple.
Councillor Waymark, yes. Thank you. I'd like to refer you to the minutes of the last council meeting held on the 5th of October. They're on page 8 of your documents. Can I ask members to, by a show of hands, if you're happy to approve those as a true and accurate record, please? Thank you. Are there any matters arising from those minutes?
Thank you, Chair. Just one small matter arising under minute number 51, which is members' questions, in which the issue was raised about possible availability of meeting rooms for charitable trusts. I'm happy to say that I've met with my counterpart at South Norfolk. We're quite happy for the Sarston room to be made available on an occasional basis or on for free to charitable trusts. We anticipate this will be only once per year for each trust in question, and we'd certainly not be looking for it to be any more than maybe 12 sessions a year overall. This would purely be during business hours, so it would not bring any additional costs to the authority, but we're happy to make that accommodation.
Thank you, Councillor Roper. Announcements. You all have a copy of the civic events attended by myself on page 17. Councillor Gurney, I did note your comments from the last meeting and have instructed that events are separated between those of the Chair and the Vice Chair. These last few months have been extremely busy, but it's been an enjoyable task, especially when forging connections with Broadland Council at cultural events such as the Norfolk and Norwich Indian Association at their Diwali celebrations and the Koblenz Society at their Advent evening. It was also lovely speaking to our older residents at 2 of the care homes I attended recently and celebrating the integration of our new residents from Ukraine and their host families. The Community at Heart Awards were an inspiration to us all, hearing about all the unpaid work our volunteers constantly undertake in our community, and I send season's greetings to them. Finally, I think it's a good time of year to thank our partners, husbands and wives, who tirelessly support us all in our duties as councillors. Without their support, it would be a much harder task. And I would personally like to thank my husband Hamid, who has been my consort and my chauffeur. Thank you. I would like to invite the leader, please, to have any announcements.
I'm so sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Thank you. Yes, I've only have a few. The first one is, I'm sure you're all aware that the County Council had their meeting on this week, and they agreed to a level 3 deal for Norfolk, but they will be making a further decision in July about the specifics surrounding that deal. Our second point is that our Assistant Director of Planning is retiring and leaving us. I'm sure you're all aware of that, and obviously we'd like to thank her enormously for all the hard work she's put in this authority for many, many years. And we will be doing some interviews, initial interviews next week. So that will be a member panel that will be looking at those. There was a member training event held on the 29th of November, which was really very well attended, and I think was actually quite excellent. It was very useful as a member to be able to go around and talk to the different departments and officers to see the sorts of things. And I think you'll probably all agree with me that there's always something you learn that you didn't know you didn't know. So I was very pleased to have attended that. And I think it looks as though we'll be trying to do some more, possibly quarterly, in the future. I'd also like to congratulate our director, Debbie Lorimer, who recently won a national award from the LGC on behalf of councils, and that was for her work on delivering this building for the two councils. And finally, the members' bulletin. Some of you may remember we used to have a members' bulletin. Well, we will be resuming that in the new year. So that will give you all something to look forward to after Christmas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. I invite members of the Cabinet who have any. Dan, sorry, Steve.
Yourself on? Testing? Yes, wonderful. Just to alert the council, really, of the funding issue that we'll be facing over the coming months, leading into setting the budget next year. As you know, the government do not settle out its contribution to us until, I believe it's next week. However, we have received a Treasury report that what we would be expecting this year, we will only be receiving 3% settlement from the government. This is clearly way below inflation yet again, which will put significant pressure on us in terms of setting our budget. I'd like to draw the Council's attention to a Cabinet report on October the 10th, which went through the ONS committee as well, because it is relevant to our situation and in terms of our reserves. And in that report, we clearly pointed out that we've got a funding gap that's predicted due to inflation, plus we also had inflationary pressures on staff increases, all of which outstrip say a £5 council tax increase. So this is a significant issue that we face. Usually a council has general reserves, so in the short term, if you hit a financial issue for unforeseen circumstances, then you can pull on those reserves to cover your gap while you sort it out long term. However, we do have an issue, and the issue is, and I'll refer the council to, if they haven't already seen it, members, the Cabinet report on the 10th October, it's online. The usable reserves that we had been committed to, including a 5.57 on general reserves, which could be used for this matter in terms of funding gap, have been committed to in terms of a substantial capital programme that had been agreed under the previous administration. That was agreed at a Cabinet meeting in February of this year by the previous Cabinet. We have therefore, at the October Cabinet this year, reviewed that, and we have said we cannot sustain that decision by that Cabinet to use those reserves in that way to fund this capital programme. So as the balance on the general reserve was at 5.571, it would not be possible to continue with the plan approved by the previous Cabinet on February 23rd to use 5.6 to fund the capital programme. We essentially would have no reserves left. I've always argued within this council, it goes back a long way, that we should have a minimum of 10% in our general reserves. Of course, we had excess of that. Therefore, we also agreed that we'd keep a minimum of 1.4 million in general reserves to cover shortfalls. This was also agreed by the Cabinet. Significant, Chair, because clearly when we're in this situation, extensive capital programme committed to, we will have to revisit the earmark reserves. They are discretionary to see if we can do something around that, and that capital commitment, and indeed the general reserves which have been committed to, because we cannot leave ourselves in a position with no reserves, and we do need to address a funding gap which has been opened up for historical reasons and inflationary pressures. So just so the council are aware of that and the job of work that is going on currently with the officers and myself, and will be with the Cabinet to balance the budget as we move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other members of the Cabinet have anything to say? No? Thank you. We have no questions from members of the public, and we have no public speaking, so we'll go straight to the Cabinet recommendations. 7.1, customer experience business case. I would invite the leader to present recommendations from the Cabinet, please.
Thank you. Yes, this comes under our programme to try to improve our service to our residents and stakeholders, and I hand over to the portfolio holder to introduce the topic and talk through the recommendations for you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second this proposal, and it's nice to bring a report to Council which offers you a win-win in many respects, because what we are looking to achieve with this investment is a significant enhancement in how we serve our residents when they approach us as customers and our other stakeholders and businesses, but also, as you'll see on page 25, a proposal which is also going to bring about cashable savings for us over a number of years. And it's not very often we're in that happy position where we could offer a better service and at the same time save money. And you might think, well, how on earth do you do that? And the simple answer is, if you get it right first time, you save a lot of money. You not only save yourself money, but you also save a lot of time and effort for your residents. And we need to move with the times as a council in terms of how we serve our residents and businesses, and move away from systems which have grown up over many years in the different departments, which essentially don't talk to one another. So that if you contact one department with one set of login, that will not be visible to the person from another department who you're dealing with on another matter. Clearly that's not sustainable going forwards, and we need to be in a position where, as I say, somebody rings up or contacts the council online and actually their customer service record is available, and whoever is answering that query on that one time can see the history and be able to address their concern properly. We also need to move away from a system where people don't get a response on their web inquiries that they make. And because they don't get a response, they then ring us up a few days later to ask for the answer to their query. This isn't a system for the future, and we need to move with the times and we need to invest. The system is perhaps creaking a bit now. If we don't do this investment, you'll find in a few years' time it really will be struggling to deal with the type of demand which we're getting from our customers. So as I say, the investment and the savings are outlined in page 25. The business case is all there. I'd like to put on record my thanks to the members who got involved in the members' workshop, and also to the residents who got involved in the workshop put on by the consultants as well, which has helped to inform this report. So hopefully we can move forwards, serve our residents and businesses better, and save money. So that's a win-win. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roper. Can I just, before we go to questions, can I just clarify who's proposing and who's seconding? Because I understood you were proposing.
I think generally speaking, the chair of cabinet proposes, and I'm seconding as the portfolio holder.
It's a joint portfolio holder.
Thank you. I think maybe I've confused the issue. I'm introducing Dan, who's proposing this, as the portfolio holder for transformation, and Councillor Riley, who is the other portfolio holder, is responsible for finance, will be seconding that. I probably didn't make that very clear, but I hope that's clarified it for you now. I don't think I've said anything untoward in the meantime, so I hope we carry on.
I don't want to speak to it now.
No. Okay.
Yes, the important thing about this, given the announcement I just made as well, the reserves, it's important to get the business case right for this. The policy, as Dan quite adequately explained, is a really good one for us. It'd be an improvement to our service provision, which I know every single councillor in this room genuinely wants to see. However, the business case did need to stack up for this, so extensive work was put into this. Because as you can see from the report, there is significant capital spend for this to happen, and that totals over 700,000 from Broadland alone. There is also a commitment to revenue costs on this, which will increase our revenue costs due to the licence fees attached with the IT. What we were able to do on the business case, and I was so pleased when we got this done, was it was able to repurpose, reprofile an unallocated underspend on IT to help fund this because the reserves, as we said, were already committed to. So we've been able to still put this policy into place. In terms of the revenue, it is a commitment to increase revenue. However, what we've also ensured is there's a proper business case and return on this for the council, because we cannot continue to have increased costs on revenue without funding them via a business case, because the council tax simply will not cover the increase in revenue on programmes. So there is a saving built into this, which will kick in year 5 through efficiencies via the service provision that this will bring. And that's a significant figure, as you can see, which will then cover the outlay in revenue. So we stay within balance. So a complete business case study has been done on that, providing the capital and long term to cover the revenue increase costs as well. And yeah, a good job was done by all on this. Joint portfolio holder work as well. So thank you, Chair, and happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Do we have any questions or comments from any members, please? Councillor Bullman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm sure the Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny will back me on this. We did actually, in Overview and Scrutiny, wholeheartedly approve the proposal because we thought it was in the best interests of the Council. However, we did actually provide for a caveat. We said what we would like to see is some mechanism, a group of councillors who would have some input and oversight for the programme to make sure that we actually were on track and getting exactly what was proposed. I don't see any reference to that in this report. Perhaps I'm getting very old these days and I miss things, but point me to something that actually says that this is actually going to take place.
I'm going to ask Councillor Starling to just clarify that, please.
Yeah, we had a good discussion about this. Councillor Newstead initially made a proposal along those lines, but we also then discussed, and I suggested, and councillors went along with this at the meeting, that this would be put into the work programme, that this would come back regularly to ONS. So rather than siphoning it off to a small number of councillors to have some sort of oversight over this, that Overview and Scrutiny has a much larger oversight, a larger number of councillors. And I know that Emma has added this into the work programme, and it will come back at regular intervals, which I think gives greater oversight than just giving it to a small group to make decisions that would then have to feed back in perhaps a slower or more ham-fisted way than ONS is capable of doing so. So whilst Councillor Bullman was right that initially had been a suggestion, that hadn't been agreed by ONS, and I see other ONS members nodding that they were saying that is the case. And I'm sure our monitoring officer will confirm that is the case. I will just say that I thought points made at ONS by Councillor Newstead were very good and worthy of discussion, which is why we wanted that put forward, that it gets regularly brought back, because this is the public face of the council in many ways. It's the time when people contact the council, so it needs to show the very best of us, but it also has a large amount of costs going forward that, as has been mentioned, could easily, if it went wrong, be quite embarrassing to the council, because it's a big expensive programme, so it needs as much oversight as possible.
Thank you. I think Councillor Riley wants to come back.
Yeah, just really to concur on this, because the points that was raised at ONS and the chair is really amplified here. It is, I'm aware, and I think the rest of us are aware on Cabinet, that it's been put in the work programme, which we're really happy about, because during the iterations on this, as we was going through the business case, which took quite some time, one of the points that was raised is that as this is phased in, there are a number of important steps, and if any of those steps are missed, then clearly that gives a delay in terms of the savings coming through to offset revenue. So it's really important that we do have some monitoring on it to ensure that those steps are maintained. So ONS having it on their work programme is a great thing for us, plus also members of the Cabinet will also be involved in their capacity as well, keeping an eye on those steps. So we understand that's the ONS position and we really support it.
Thank you. Is there any other further questions or comments? No? We go straight to the recommendation. Is that on page 27 of your documents? Is item 5 and 6, Cabinet to recommend to Council. All those in favour, please show your hand. Thank you. That looks unanimous, is it? Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much. We'll go to 7.2, Public Spaces Protection Order, which is on page 53 of your documents, and I invite the leader to present recommendations from Cabinet.
Thank you. Just for sake of clarity, I'm going to hand this over to Jan, whose portfolio this comes under. He will be proposing recommendations and I will be seconding those. So Jan, if you'd like to introduce the paper for us.
Thank you very much. So this is a Public Spaces Protection Order. It's been through ONS and Cabinet. It's related to communities around Broadland having been reporting vehicle-related antisocial behaviour, and it seems it's a kind of behaviour that is on the rise. Incidents can vary from a single car being used in ways causing nuisance and annoyance to pre-planned gatherings with up to hundreds of cars, and a small minority causing serious antisocial behaviour and sometimes seriously endangering members of the public. So this council's officers have worked closely with the policing teams and prepared this public space protection order, which is presented here, so that we can protect our communities better from the unacceptable behaviours they are experiencing. There was a public consultation, and the response to the public consultation has been strongly in favour of the council making such an order, and particularly if it applies at all times of the week throughout the year. There was a suggestion originally to restrict it, but the consultation feedback was certainly to apply at all times of the week throughout the year. Just to be clear, law-abiding motorists, local people and visitors can be assured that this order will help to protect people's interests in visiting parts of Broadland, socialising, enjoying cars, car clubs, etc., without causing nuisance, annoyance, harassment, alarm or distress to local communities. So it's not going to affect them. But the proposed prohibitions would apply district-wide and at all times for the maximum period of 3 years. It's evidence-based, reasonable, necessary, and I'd say proportionate to the problems that we observe of antisocial behaviour. So I'd like to propose the recommendation to Council to make the Public Spaces Protection Order as proposed in paragraph 4.6 in Appendix 1 of the paper over the geographical areas identified in Appendix 2 for a period of 3 years.
Thank you. Councillor Holland, do you wish to speak now or reserve the right?
I'll reserve the right, thank you.
Okay. I'd like to invite questions. Oh, lots of hands up. Councillor Nurden, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question of clarity. This is a public spaces protection order. Does it apply to private land where people gather and they are in their vehicles antisocial?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So this is antisocial behaviour affecting residents and businesses, and certainly many businesses that are affected, for example, on their supermarket car parks, for example, this public space protection order would cover that instance.
So if it's on a farmer's land out in the rural area and he has permission to ride these quad bikes or whatever and they make a heck of a racket, is that covered by this public spaces protection order?
Thank you. So there is, as you'll see in the paper and the order, officers are taking into account reasonableness and what the ordinary person would call reasonable or unreasonable, and therefore action can be taken if it's unreasonable.
Councillor Gurney.
Thank you, Chairman. I, as a Helston councillor, and I'm sure my other 3 councillors will absolutely support this, because we do have and have a history in Helston of antisocial problems, particularly on B&Q car park, Asda and other large supermarket car parks in the area. And this does cause a disturbance to residents, particularly in the early hours of the morning. I'm pleased that we have gone with the full 24/7 restriction, because I certainly know when I discussed this with my fellow councillors at the Environmental Excellence panel, there was a suggestion that it would just be for specific days, and we were concerned that people would get the message, don't come out on a Tuesday night because you'll get nicked, but on a Wednesday you'll be fine. So I welcome the fact that it is a blanket cover. One of the questions I asked then at that meeting some months ago, and I ask it again because I still don't know, and the paper here does not still give me that information, under 6.1, page 58, it says that all of this, and including the signage, will be financed within existing revenue budgets. And I did ask at the time, and I still don't know, how much revenue budget is allocated and how much the signage is going to cost. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Councillor Gurney. And you mentioned the periods for which this order would be operating, and we took into account the comments that were made both in the consultation and at the panel meeting as well. So that was altered accordingly. Similarly, I took up with officers the issue that you raised previously around the costs, which will be fairly minimal in terms of the costs of the signage and so on. It's not. It isn't as if we're going to be putting signs up along the Broadland Northway. It's going to be very much targeted, and we're also anticipating support from businesses, certainly those that are affected who may well wish to contribute to that signage. So overall, the costs can be accommodated within the existing budget, and I've been assured of that.
And how much is that then, please? That's the question I'm asking. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Emma to come in, please.
The power of teams when you're in a meeting, to confirm that the cost of this will be less than £5,000, and the final location of the signs is currently being agreed, but it's less than £5,000.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, I'm going to ask Councillor Holland to respond, please.
Thank you. I don't think there's very much to say, really. I was about to say it's under 6,000, so I'm glad I was right. Yes, I think this is an ideal thing that we need to be doing. I know it seems draconian, but I'm very pleased to say that it affects public land or where there is public access. So if somebody's got a field somewhere in the middle of nowhere and they want to charge around on it on their car, that isn't a problem. But when it's a public space that's open, then that is a problem. And we have it very near to me, and these people have tried all sorts of ways to stop this from happening, including the thought of having to put bollards up at the weekends and so on to stop it happening. They are very happy that this is going to happen, and they're more than happy also to contribute to a sign to go up to say so. So I think it can only be a good thing for all of us, so I can only commend that we all vote for this, and hopefully it will pay off and we will all be much quieter at the weekends round our roadways. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, do you wish to add anything to that?
No, fine, just move the recommendations.
We'll go on to the recommendations on page 59 of your documents. All those in favour of this recommendation, please raise your hand. Thank you. I think that's unanimous. Go to 7.3, Council Tax Assistance Scheme for 24-25, which is on page 66 of your documents, and I invite the leader to present recommendations from the Cabinet.
Thank you. For this one, I'm going to hand over to Councillor Harpley, who is the portfolio holder for communities and housing, and she will be reports.
Thank you, Chair. Very happy to propose this. So this has been through the relevant policy development panel, ONS, Cabinet, completely unchallenged, so I'm not expecting any challenge tonight. So the Council Tax Assistance is a local scheme and it must be reviewed and agreed by Council every year. A bit of background, in April 2022 a number of changes were made to the scheme to ensure that it was still fit for purpose. that it was directing support to those most in need, making work pay, and that it was still efficient to process. The amended scheme has now been in place for a full financial year, which has allowed us to undertake an analysis to see if these objectives have been met. So the report from Policy and Practice, now they are an independent company, show that this is still the case, and therefore we are happy that no changes are needed to be made to the scheme for this year. The report also shows that the changes that we have made have ensured that the scheme has remained essentially cost neutral. So any changes that we may wish to make in the future will need to undergo a public consultation, and we would have to model any changes to understand the cost implications. And to do this thoroughly, we would need to start at the beginning of the new financial year, and therefore we are proposing to start the discussions for that in year 25-26 in April 2024. I hope that makes sense. You have to give a year's notice to model those changes. Yeah, that's that.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
Yes,
Steve, yes. Steve is seconding. Do you wish to speak now, Steve, or reserve the right?
No, I'm fine.
Yeah, you're fine. Okay. Any questions and comments from members, please? Any questions? No? Okay. Councillor Riley, do you wish to speak? No. Okay. Councillor Harper, do you wish to speak?
No, just move to.
Okay. Right, we'll move to the recommendation on page 71 of your documents, and I invite you to show your hands if you agree. Thank you, it's unanimous. Right, 7.4, discretionary housing payment and council tax discretionary relief policies. I invite the leader to present recommendations from Cabinet.
Thank you. You're on again, Councillor Hartley. I think that comes under communities and housing, and so that will, I'll leave it.
Thank you, Chair. So this policy sits alongside the previous one. So the Council has a discretionary housing payment DHP policy, and it sets out how benefit team make decisions for these payments. Now, this policy has been reviewed to ensure it remains fair and addresses the continued demands since COVID, paired with reduced funding from the Department for Work and Pensions. Due to the financial pressures on housing associations, we are seeing an increase in demand for rental payments in advance for these tenancies. So consequently, we are seeing an increase in demand for those DHB applications to cover the payments. The fund that the Council receives from the DWP for our DHP payments would not be sufficient to cover all the applications for this. So the policy has been reviewed, therefore, to state that we will not make DHP payments for rent in advance except in exceptional circumstances. So due to the nature of the discretionary scheme, we have retained the ability to make payments in exceptional circumstances to allow us to pay a customer when we feel they have no other option. So it's only in those extreme circumstances. Now, the decision matrix has also been reviewed to take into account the reduced DHP budget. The most significant change is reducing the standard length of an award. However, this will now be paired with extra holistic support to assist the customer with their situation in other non-financial ways. So we are taking a broader approach to helping people rather than just trying to throw money at a situation. This matrix provides guidelines rather than rules, which allows the team to make consistent and fair decisions. However, they still always have the discretion to make an alternative decision if they feel it is appropriate. The Council's discretionary housing payments DHP policy is also reviewed regularly to ensure it remains reflective of current legislation, work practices, customer demand and funding available. No amendments have been deemed necessary to the operation of this policy, and we are able to manage the demand within the current budget.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Holland, seconded. We should speak now, Councillor Holland? No. Right. Questions from members, please. Any questions or comments? You're all very quiet tonight, aren't you? Good. Okay. Don't talk out. Councillor Holland, do you wish to speak?
I don't think I really have anything to add. There's nothing much changed. I think we've just had a thorough review. I'm happy to move straight to the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hartley, do you wish to say anything else?
Just straight to recommendation.
Right, we go to recommendation on page 99 of your documents. All those in favour, please. Thank you, that's unanimous. Thank you. I would like to, we've got Monitoring Officer's report next on page 116. Invite the leader to present the report, please.
Thank you. You have the report in front of you. I think you will see that most of these things are to do with some staffing changes, to do with the arrangements for elections, and then there are some items that refer to the new property company that we have set up. I think the options are fairly obvious. I move that these be accepted, and if anybody else needs to make a comment about that, do so.
Can I have a seconder, please? Anybody? Councillor Riley. Oh, Councillor Nurden. We'll go for Councillor Nurden.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question of clarity. I recall
No,
attending...
are you seconding?
Sorry?
Steve's seconding. You're asking a question, are you?
Yeah, you're asking a question, sorry.
Okay.
If I may. As I say, it's just for a bit of clarity, and it is in relation to paragraph 4.1 of the report. And I recall attending an overview and scrutiny meeting last year where the governance arrangements for the company were presented. A point of clarity was sought by one of the members regarding the role of officers. And I left the meeting with the understanding that the officers would act in an advisory capacity. Can you please advise whether there has been a change to the governance arrangements that were agreed at last year through the officers being appointed as directors? In other words, do they hold a vote on the company's board? Or, if I put it another way, what is their role in the decision-making process? I just wanted to comment that it's unfortunate that I'm unable to access the papers for that meeting to refresh my recollection of the contents of the original paper that was presented. Thank you.
I think Emma or me can cover this. Yeah, I do recall that ONS meeting where there was a reference question about it. The key document here is Appendix. Is it A or 1, whatever it is? Appendix 1. So all these companies that are set up, including existing Broadland Growth company, has directors that vote. The key issue here is it's not an independent company that's owned by commercially by people in a commercial way as shareholders. The shareholder here is this council. Therefore, it's completely controlled by this council. So Appendix 1 is an extract from the shareholder agreement which governs the governance for how that company operates. So the directors, all directors have a vote. However...
Steve, I'm just going to stop you there a minute. Can I just get Emma to come in?
Yeah, Emma, do you want to cover it?
Councillor Nurden, can you just clarify which section of the report you're talking about? I think you're talking about Norfolk Environmental Credits. Am I correct?
Yes. Oh, right.
You are, yeah.
I wasn't, I thought it was talking about... Right,
no.
Okay.
Chairman, I don't know if this is helpful. So in terms of the structure of the company, and I'll invite Phil to come in if I get this wrong, the company is constituted with the member authorities being the member organisations with council representatives controlling that as the members of the company, and the directors of the company, i.e. delivering the operational business within the framework of the business plan and budget approved by the members of the organisation, i.e. the councillors. The directors will deliver the operational requirements of the company in that structure. So the directors are only empowered to the extent that the articles allow within the business plan and within the budget, signed off by councillors representing each of the authorities that make up the ownership board of the company. Phil, I think that's right. Thank you.
If I may, just for clarity, because there are two officers as directors and one shareholder member, being Councillor Davis, is it potentially possible that they could vote against what Councillor Davis wants to vote for? That's my concern.
I'm going to ask the leader to come in on this, please.
No, I think this is actually how it was agreed to be set up in the first place, if I recall, because I was present at that overview and scrutiny meeting. And I think the key point here is that nothing will go forward unless it has been agreed by the shareholder representative with their council in the first place. So that will have to be done. It will only go to the board then for them to manage that, assuming that those councils and councillors have agreed to it. And I think you'll find that the similar thing will happen if you are talking about the second company that we're talking about, which is the Broadland Living. It is the shareholder representative who operates on behalf of the council. So those things will be agreed by the councillors and then taken to the board of directors for them to enact. So I think that both of those actually are very similar. The main difference with the Norfolk Environmental Credits one is that there are more than one council involved, of course. So there are more shareholder representatives who have those discussions. But I think, does that satisfy the, yeah, thank you.
Any further questions? No? I can ask the leader to sum up.
I think I've more or less just summed up. I hope everybody's happy with that, with that arrangement. I think it's a good structure that's been put together. I think the idea that the councillors are the people that have the last say about how those business plans are put together. It's something we definitely need, the Norfolk Environmental Credits. The property management company, I think we're all very happy with. I think that's going to be particularly useful given that we now have more properties to manage. I will just go back to the other items that there are some other slight items on there, which is to do with the outside bodies changes. I think those are fairly uncontested. I think we're all quite happy with those. And I think the other bits are fairly obvious, including the compulsory purchase order update, which is to comply with legislation changes so that we're all doing the right thing. So as far as I'm concerned, I see there are 7 recommendations in total, so I'm more than happy to go ahead with those, and I hand over back to the chair for her to run through those for us.
Okay, we have 8 recommendations on page 116 and 117. Are you happy to take all recommendations on block? Yeah? Okay, all those in favour, please show your hand. Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you. Moving on, there are no reports from outside organisations, so we will go to motions. Motion 10.1, declaring support for the Climate and Ecology Bill. I'm going to ask Councillor Davis to present this motion, please. You have 5 minutes, Councillor Davis.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is very much in the news recently. We've just gone through COP28, where it's clear that human activity is causing irreversible climate change. It's being felt around the world and in the UK. The average global temperature has already increased by 1.2 degrees C. It's been estimated above pre-industrial levels, and it's rising now and likely to exceed 1.5. So this is really important. The natural world has also reached crisis point, and it's in the fact that 28% of plants and animals, it's been estimated, are threatened with extinction. The UK is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world, as more than 1 in 7 of our plants and animals face extinction, and more than 40% are in decline, as we see before us in Norfolk and Broadland. So the Climate and Ecology Bill is a private member's bill. It's currently before the House of Commons. It aims to align current UK environmental policy with the need to halt and reverse nature loss. It's a goal agreed to at various international meetings, including the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, COP, to the Convention on Biological Diversity, which aims to halt and reverse biodiversity loss by 2030. The bill also aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in line with the UK's share of the remaining global carbon budget. So we have a global carbon budget, and we have a responsibility to reduce ours within that budget. And this was the budget that was agreed at COP21 via the Paris Agreement. The Climate and Ecology Bill, it's been introduced in the UK Parliament, most recently in the House of Commons on the 10th of May 2023. It's backed by 172 cross-party MPs and peers, 132 MPs, so that's a significant number for a private member's bill. And now, and I can update the figures from what's in the motion here, because 80 local councils have joined in just the last month. So it's now over 330 local councils. And it's supported by nearly 200 eminent scientists, wildlife trusts, and various non-governmental organisations, CPRE, and members of the public. We really do need legally binding targets and a just transition plan. And we need action, not vague promises, to phase out fossil fuel as fairly and rapidly as possible. The good news is that this is precisely what the Climate and Ecology Bill can deliver. And support for the bill is growing all the time. And it will support our own endeavours as a council and the aspiration of the former administration for this council to reach net zero by 2030 that we all signed up to. So we can join the many other councils to show that support, and that's why I'm asking you to support this declaration today. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand the leader is seconding the motion. Yes, would you like to speak now? Or? Okay. I'd like to invite debate from members, please. Fran, you have 3 minutes, and any member who's speaking can only speak once.
Thank you, Jim. I was disappointed that this was brought tonight, because I was hoping that we could have complete agreement at this meeting, but that's not to be. This is completely outside our remit. This was said before by both the proposer and the seconder when we brought up a motion around the A47, improvements to that, which actually do impact directly upon our residents. So I just think it's disappointing that this is in front of us today. I've never known a resolution to inform the local press. If something is important enough, the press will be interested and they will report upon it. So why the devil do we need this within the resolution? I just think, once again, you know, unless we make meaningful changes to what we're doing, and I've not seen that so far from this administration, this is just virtual signaling. So I think that's really disappointing once again. The proposer says how much support this has got in Parliament. It really hasn't. There's 650 MPs in the House of Commons and nearly 800 peers. So across the board there, it's got around about 12% support. That's not overwhelming support. And I think this is highly likely to go nowhere, never become an act. Now, I'm not saying we don't need to address climate change. There are huge changes in climate. We all know that. We know there are. But I just think this is virtue signalling, and so I can't support it. And I'd like to move that we go straight to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, who's? Yeah, okay, Steve.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't actually agree with Councillor Wymark's comments on this, because this is a cross-party. There's Conservative MPs, Lib Dems, Labour that are supporting this, and my sort of old long-term experience of private members' bill and early day motions, which I was lobbying around for many years when I was in London, that number, 172, is really high for most private members' bills. And there are private members' bills that become law that originally had a significantly lower number than that backed the private members' bill. One, I recall, had only 40 and it became law. So it's not impossible that this becomes law. I think the important thing about this is the reality of what it's saying in terms of the climate and where we are. And that's worth supporting. If you look at the amount of councils that have supported this, we are only one of, 330 now? Councils, and that again crosses the political spectrum. In terms of press release, it's custom and practice for councils, this council, other councils, the county council, to issue press releases around decisions or motions, whatever it has passed, and that's commonplace for a press release to be issued. It's happened before, and therefore I think that this motion, there's one thing you couldn't say about it, is that it's not actually political. It's talking about a factual issue, and it's across political spectrum. So I think we should join with these other councils, Chair, and we should give this all of our support. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Roper.
Thank you. I'm supporting this motion before council, which, having looked at the bill, it seems to be a fairly straightforward set of proposals in the bill around the government having a plan and sticking to that plan in the future, which I'm sure is something which we would all hope any government of any political colour would do. I'm slightly disappointed in the response from the Leader of the Opposition in terms of opposing something without actually saying what bits of the legislation he actually disagrees with. The whole basis of the objection seems to be that, well, you didn't agree with something we put a couple of meetings ago, so we're not going to agree with this now, which is, I don't think that's probably the way we should necessarily be doing this. I mean, we did have the debate before about the climate change emergency. We could see then that there are divisions within the Conservative group on this council, and that's apparent, and you know, you have to manage them for yourselves, because what we saw then was the Conservative group saying, we will agree that there's a climate change emergency as long as you do it with our wording. But if you're not going to accept our wording, we're going to vote against it and deny that there is one in the first place. And if you look at the minutes of the council meeting that we had, I believe it was in July, wasn't it? You will see the Conservatives raised their own motions, amendment to change the wording. They didn't get it through, so then they opposed the whole thing. He's calling it virtue signalling. I think opposition to this motion is signalling no virtue, quite honestly. And I would urge all councillors to think very carefully and to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other questions from members, oh yes, Councillor Empsall.
I'd just like to correct Councillor Roper regarding our position at the last council meeting when we had the climate emergency. Our view was simple. If you're just saying something without actually putting targets or any kind of accountability to it, it is just words. Our view was, if you're going to say that you want to do a climate emergency, you bring it to the table with, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it. This is exactly the same. It's just words that we have no input from as a district council. All that is being said is words. If this administration that is now in power kept telling us that we weren't doing enough for the climate emergency when we were in power, we set the the recycling rate at 60%. Why have this administration not changed that to 75% to say we want to do more? You're not doing anything more than we were doing. You're just telling us we're not as interested. We brought the councils to this building. The Liberal Democrats and the Labour councillors voted against coming to this building, which was a massive 80% drop in our carbon footprint. We put the new waste contract in, which was a 96% drop in the... We were doing all the work and being told we weren't doing enough. Now we just have motion after motion of simple, we are talking about this, you're not doing anything at all, you are just saying we want to put another motion. So if you want to put a motion, say, we want to put a motion and we want to be targeted on it so we can show that we're doing more. But until then, we feel as a Conservative group that it's all talk. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Councillor Holland as the seconder to come in, please. Wish to speak?
Yes, thank you. I think one of the things I want to stress is that we have almost reached the point of no return here. What I'm really pleased to see this week, and I can't tell you how thrilled I was to see this happen, but at COP28, they finally got agreement to include fossil fuels as part of the problem, and that's from the oil countries. That's something they've been trying to do for 30 years. I'm sure, I know we all feel the same here. This is not a political point. This is about, it's a global and a humanitarian issue. And the point, I would like to just respond to Jonathan's point here, because I understand what you're saying about it just being words, because they often are. And that's part of the problem. Our government sets a target and it's just words. The point of this bill is to say to government, you need to have a strategy, you need to set up a plan that shows how we're going to meet those targets. I commend what the previous administration did. They did do some fantastic stuff for our environmental practices here in Broadland, and we'd like to keep doing that. But some of that can't be done without government help and government support and government having a plan that says how we're going to achieve it. And this bill is, the design of it is such that if the government can get a plan together, they can then help the councils to do it in their areas. We get the support we need and the ideas and the funding that comes forward to help make this work. So that's why I'm signing up to this, because I do believe it will make a difference in Broadland. And I do believe that having a plan, not just words, is the important part. We have got things coming forward at Broadland still that will add to this programme, and we'll be bringing them forward over the next year or so. So we've not stopped, and I'm not trying to detract from what the previous administration did, because it was really good and we want to build on it. But we want the government to build on it as well, because I want there to actually be a planet for my descendants to grow up and live in. I can't go any further with that, I'm sorry, but I commend this motion to you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, do you wish to respond before the vote? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. We do recognise that we need to work together, and appreciate what Councillor Emsell said about the measures that have been taken, and we're going to continue, and we want to build on that. And that's why I feel this is something that we can all support. It is a cross-party members' bill, and it is supported by some notable Conservative MPs, as well as Liberal Democrats, Labour, Greens, Plaid, SNP, across the board. And that's the great thing about it, is that people are coming together, recognising the emergency we're in and recognising that we need to work together. So it's not something that is to divide us, it's to bring us together, very much. But as has already been said, it is very pertinent to us as a district council, because we need legally binding targets to have this just transition. And at the moment, current government, as has been said, there are words there, but then they will renege and come back and say, well, not 2030, it'll be 2035, and so on. And that's why we need a clear plan with binding targets. We'd like to do more, and we want to do more, and we are developing plans, such as retrofit, which is something we've talked about before at this council. But without the funding from central government to do that, how are we going to move forward? All these, our residents who are in fuel poverty, who are living in cold houses throughout this winter, who need insulated houses, who need to help with in terms of their energy efficiency to heat their homes. That's what we need to do. So we have a plan, we have a warm homes programme. Again, it's carried over from the last administration, but we need a retrofit accelerator programme to be able to really improve many more houses within our district. And they're desperately required, that work. So that's why this bill is important, and it is relevant to us as a district council and many other councils across the country. That without that clear timetable and targets and a proper plan for both addressing carbon emissions and the biodiversity crisis that we're in, then we're not going to be able to move forward as a district council without that central government support, which is why I commend this bill and this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I'm going to go to the vote. I'm going to ask all members who are in favour of this motion to please raise your hands. Chairman. And those against, please? 1. Those abstaining? Thank you. This motion has been passed. I now close the meeting at 9 minutes past 8. I do hope you'll stay on and enjoy the refreshments that are left available. Councillor Murrell.
Chair, if I may, Councillor Riley made a statement, but we were not allowed to respond or anything on that, so we can't ask any questions. Okay.
You had the chance to put your hand up. That's fine.
We didn't.
Can't ask questions on. Yeah.
Well, I didn't give the opportunity.